Well, now, a new report today says that Brexit is polarising identities in the United Kingdom to such an extent that people now identify more with their view on leaving the EU than their political parties. The UK is increasingly polarised by Brexit, it says. By mid-2018, only just over 6% of respondents to the British election study did not identify with either Leave or Remain. Those seeing themselves predominantly as Scottish or Irish are more inclined to support Remain, while among those who describe themselves as English, not British, there is strong support not only for Brexit, but for a hard Brexit. More voters than ever describe Labour's position as unclear and confused, while more Conservative voters, 46%, than Conservative members, 38%, support Theresa May's draft Brexit deal. And a survey of Conservative MPs show they're more aligned than ever with their Eurosceptic membership. And a lot more in this report as well. With me now is Anand Menon, the director of the think tank, the UK in a Changing Europe, who have come up with this Brexit and Public Opinion 2019. Very good to see you, Anand. And let's talk first of all about that issue of Brexit identity trumping party affiliation now, but by a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it trumps party identification in the sense that far fewer people don't have a Brexit identity now than don't have a party identity. But I think it's worth saying a couple of things. Firstly, we've seen this tail off in party identification for some years now. I mean, it precedes the referendum, so that was a trend anyway. But obviously now we've got this new identity on top of that, and what we're not quite sure about is what impact that's going to have on party
Well, I was going to put that very question to you. I mean, what implications would that have potentially for, you know, much talk about forming a new party, if a new Remain party formed? Could it get enough votes to get it across the line in our political system in a general election?
Well, there's two different things. Firstly, let me say the new Brexit divide is odd because it's a sort of different sort of contestation to the normal left-right divide, and what that means is it splits the two big parties. So both parties have an internal Brexit fight going on, okay? So it makes it hard to manage. But as for a new party, as you said, the obstacles are formidable because we have an electoral system that tends to push us towards two-party outcomes. And, of course, we have 650 constituencies. You've used the parallel of Macron in France, which everyone uses. His was a new party, came out of nowhere. As president in France, you campaign in one national constituency. To win an election in Britain, you need data on 650 individual constituencies, and that's time-consuming, it's difficult, you require feet on the ground, and you require an awful lot of money. So the prospects for a new party, I don't think, are great, but the problem...
Well, what about an existing one? Well, if it became more Remainy, you might know who I'm referring to.
Well, yes. I mean, here the numbers are interesting because clearly on the Labour side, you have seen a shift in the sense that the constituencies that back in 2016 voted Leave, now, according to the new numbers, are majority Remain. The problem that Jeremy Corbyn is wrestling with is Labour has this dilemma that it has some of the most Leave seats in the country and some of the most Remain seats in the country. And what the leadership are worried about is the fact that some of those Leave seats are marginals. And so a slight shift towards Remain, it doesn't matter if Chuka Umunna gets 2,000 more votes because he's sitting on a massive majority. But it does matter if Mary Cray loses Wakefield, where she's sitting on a relatively small majority. So those are the calculations.
And that's what you found, though, isn't it? The people in general are just confused about the Labour
more
position.
People than ever do not get the Labour position. And the Tory MP yesterday in the House of Commons said, I think the Labour position on Brexit is absolutely crystal clear. They're for Brexit in the north, they're anti-Brexit in the south, and that kind of summed up the ambiguity.
OK, you seem to back that up. No deal, obviously much discussion about that at the moment. I mean, first of all, clear up for us what people understand by no deal. You know, so, it's often said that a lot of people think that it means the status quo.
No, that's not true. I think you hear that particularly from a lot of Remain campaigners saying the only reason they're saying that is they don't understand it. And actually, I think in the sample, 4% of people thought it meant the status quo. So it's not as if people think it means continuing as before. But what is striking is on the Conservative side, and by that I mean not just Conservative members who seem very keen on no deal and very happy to accept it, but also increasingly Conservative MPs, that they are or relatively relaxed about the prospect of no deal. And that, of course, means that they are less likely to come round to Theresa May's deal in Parliament.
Immigration, what have you found out about that? I mean, such a big issue in the referendum. Is that kind of dropping away from national consciousness? I mean, people less concerned about it.
I think the two chapters on immigration are amongst the most interesting, because what they show is that if you sit people down to talk about it, first of all, they tend to see both the pros and cons of immigration. They're not virulently anti, not virulently for, but they see trade-offs, and they're in favour generally of a skills-based approach to immigration. But the more interesting finding, I think, is if you try and measure, which Ipsos Mori does year on year in a salience poll, what people think are the most important issues, it was in the 40% just before the referendum. It's now down to its lowest level of 20% of people who see it as one of the most important issues. And people who think that immigration is economically beneficial and culturally enriching has been going up since the referendum. What we're not sure about, I mean, it is a remarkable shift.
It really is.
And in a sense, some of the polling now suggests that people would rather keep trading with the single market than end free movement, which is interesting given the Prime Minister's position. What we don't know for certain is whether this change in attitudes is because people think Brexit has dealt with the problem, so it will go away, or whether their attitudes are changing for other reasons, whether it's because the media has done a lot of coverage of the impact of EU citizens in this country and so on.
I think we can squeeze in one other finding, which I found very interesting. This idea, again, coming from the Remain side, that perhaps they understand more about the complexities of the European Union. You found that that's not actually the case?
No, there's been some quite careful survey work done with questions addressed to Leavers and Remainers to test their knowledge, and actually what we found is they have pretty much the same amount of knowledge. I mean, it's important to stress this test doesn't argue for a moment that everyone's well informed. They could all be bad informed,
right? But
our finding is they're equally.
But so therefore, leading to the idea that there's quite a lot of emotion and perhaps culture involved in this.
Absolutely. I mean, because this has become an identity, it means not only that it's quite fixed, but also that it shapes people's worldview. So one of the interesting findings is people view new facts through the prism of their Brexit identities. So Leavers think the economy is doing very well. Not in the future, now. Remainers think the economy isn't doing so well. So this isn't about what you expect in the future. People view the present differently according to what their identity is.
Anand Menon, I've got to end it there. If you're into that kind of thing, great bedtime reading. Thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us about it. Brexit and public opinion.